Rep's Aries 2.0 has arrived, and I don't want to ruin this video for you, but this has to be the best thing Rep's ever made, even if there are some questionable design choices that we'll talk about. If you're looking to maximize the versatility of your power rack without sacrificing functionality, the Aries should be on your list. In a home gym, space is always at a premium, so packing a functional trainer, a low row that's a huge improvement over the original versions, and a lat pull-down into a space-saving bundle is a game changer in the home gym scene. At least the original Aries was a game changer. Now just about everyone has or is dropping a similar machine. But the 2.0 has a lot of upgrades and improvements over the 1.0 that we've got sitting right over there. So did Rep do enough to justify a new version? Well, we're going to make some comparisons, not only between the 2.0 and the 1.0, but to some other options we might have nearby. If you're looking to pick up an Aries, you've got a few decisions to make because Rep has a lot of ways to build this thing. There's 7 different finish options to choose from for your rack. Rep's clear coat is absolutely gorgeous, by the way. You can opt for a 93-inch height like us or 80 inches for those basement dwellers. There's a few different depths. Our original PR5000 was 41 inches deep. We've since shrunk this one down to 30 inches to save a little space because someone in this gym might have a little equipment addiction. Feel free to mix and match upright and cross-member colors because let's say you want a red and black theme, which I hear all the coolest people have. Or if you're maxing out all of your lifts, then why not upgrade your stacks and add another 50 pounds to each of them like we have. There's of course the 6-post build like we've got, but you can also do a 4-post like our 1.0 was. Luckily, this time the 4-post doesn't sacrifice a lot like the original Aries did. Rep is even working on a bracket that will allow the 4-post to have a pull-up bar. They've clearly spent a lot of time engineering this and listening to customer feedback, which is exactly what you want to see in a version 2.0. It's not perfect though. We'll get into the specifics of the lat pull-down, the low row, and functional trainers, meaning how well they work and where Rep has kind of missed the mark, but by turning the stacks 90 degrees and pushing them back onto the rear cross members, Rep has opened up a lot of valuable space. On the original, you couldn't use a safety squat bar, there was no space for a spotter, and you couldn't incline bench. At least, not without some creativity or by working outside of the rack. But I'm not paying $2,800 for a rack add-on to get creative and find workarounds. Now, whether you put the 2.0 on your PR5000, Rep's 3x3 rack with 1-inch holes in hardware, or you add it onto your PR4000, their 3x3 rack with 5/8 holes, you won't have problems like those anymore. For the most part, we'll talk about incline a little later in the review. Rep has also ensured the Aries works with their ecosystem of attachments. Things like the modular storage system, but more exciting than that is they've got a lot more coming. Something to rival Rogue's Rhino belt squat, a leg extension leg curl, which I think may be referring to the one they've teased that they've been working on for their Blackwing bench, new jammer arms, which as we'll see with them changing how the cables are routed in the 2.0, they've already made space for, a Smith machine attachment, and more. I'm not sure if it's impressive or pathetic that I went through all of their content to find those comments, but if you're looking for in-depth and thorough reviews, you're in the right place. So if you enjoy our content and would like to encourage my obsessive and maybe slightly unstable ways, then please use our links if you decide to purchase something from any of the companies we're about to discuss, because they'll send us a small commission at no cost to you, and it's your support that keeps this channel running. Let's talk about shipping and assembly quickly because building the original Aries was bordering on awful. This was much better. The build has been simplified, and it's a good example of Rep making a lot of incremental improvements to the Aries. The most important of which is by changing the cable routing and tweaking some other things, it seems like they fixed the cable twisting issue that some of us had with the 1.0. I'm not saying it's now a necessarily quick or easy build, but it is easier. It's still a complex machine. There's still a lot of pulleys, but parts like the top cross members are already assembled, which really speeds the process up. The packaging is very well done. It comes in a crate with everything boxed individually and bubble wrapped so nothing gets beaten up in shipping. I know more than a few companies that could take some notes from Rep here, because the only one I want abusing my expensive equipment is me. Well, and maybe my family. Improved assembly and lots of different configuration options are all well and good, but they don't mean anything when it comes to functionality. So let's break down exactly what the Aries is, the features, and what you're getting if you buy this. With dual independent weight stacks, 2 people can use this at the same time, and because the Aries has 6 pull points, 2 for the functional trainer, 2 for the lat pull down, and 2 for the low row, you have true unilateral capabilities. That means when the stacks aren't linked, and I do want to talk about the linking system in a minute because I'm not in love with it, but when they're not linked, the stacks work independently, which opens up some possibilities in your training. Now, how important that feature is to you is going to be based on your own training and preferences, but it's a cool feature even if not one I utilize often. As I said in my Rogue FM single and twin stack reviews, I've always just switched hands and been fine. That being said, I will give the nod to Rep on the versatility of the dual pull points, because when combined with the swiveling pulleys on the lat pull down and low row, you can get a bit more creative with the Aries, which is a fancy way of saying I've figured out more ways to do curls with them. And as we all know, curl versatility is the only true judge of quality. I initially thought the swiveling pulleys were kind of gimmicky, but the more I've played around with them, the more uses I found for them. Are they necessary? Maybe not, but they are a nice feature to have. Making this the point where I'd typically say something like, if you want to see a comparison video between the Aries and twin stack, then let us know, but you've made it more than clear that's something you want to see. So please let us know what you want compared in that video and subscribe so you don't miss it. Alright, so we've got dual weight stacks and mine are upgraded to 310 pounds each, just like my original Aries was. Did I ever use all that weight? No. Did that stop me from upgrading the stacks again? Obviously not. I would have been fine with each stack being 260 pounds, which is the base option. But should you decide you need more weight, you can upgrade and add 50 pounds per side at any point down the line. Now that sounds like a lot of weight, and it is, but the Aries has a 2-to-1 pulley ratio at every pull point. That means if I set my stacks to the max, which is 620 pounds of total weight, and pull, I can't move the things. But don't give me too much credit thinking, well, yeah, nobody's gonna row 620 pounds. A 2-to-1 ratio means that 620 pounds actually feels like 310 pounds, which I still can't row. The 2-to-1 ratio cuts the weight in half, and there's a few benefits there. One, you gain twice the cable travel. For every foot I pull, that stack only moves 6 inches. That means I've got all the cable travel I could ever want and will never be limited by the machine. I've tested the Aries with dozens of movements and have never had an issue with cable travel. And believe me, there's nothing more frustrating than poorly designed equipment getting in the way of your workouts. 2, the 2-to-1 ratio gives me a lower starting weight and smaller weight increments. Here's what I mean. The top plate on the Aries, because it has a pulley bracket, the pulley, and other components attached to it, weighs 20 pounds. Can you imagine your functional trainer starting at 20 pounds? I've tested a system that started at 15 pounds and jumped 10 pounds per plate. My wife literally couldn't use it. I don't care what it costs you. If you can't use it, it's worthless. Well, with the 2-to-1 ratio, the Aries functional trainer starts at 10 pounds and each plate adds another 5 pounds. 5-pound weight jumps on a functional trainer are pretty standard with home gym equipment, but they really shouldn't be. Progressing on delt raises and flies can be difficult 5 pounds at a time because going from, let's say, 15 pounds to 20 is a big increase. To combat that, Rep has added integrated adder weights into the Aries 2.0. These things are brilliant and should really be standard on systems like this. They add 2.5 pounds per side, allowing you to make 2.5-pound jumps. They even added cute little bumpers to the bottom, so when your wife throws the adder weights up there and misses the clip on the top, it doesn't damage your equipment. or your marriage. What about the 2-to-1 ratio on the lat pull down and low row though? Well, when the stacks aren't linked and you're doing unilateral work, you've got the same weight as the functional trainer, 2.5-pound jumps with the adder weights all the way up to the stack's max. When you want a lot of weight for those big heavy pulls, you can join the stacks together, giving you a max of 260 pounds or 310 pounds with the stack upgrade, which means you'll never outgrow those big heavy weight stacks. Because of the integrated adder weights, you'll have 5-pound increments when the stacks are combined, which is a big upgrade from the 10-pound increments you normally see on equipment like this. And it should once again help you progress in weights without needing gym pins, magnetic adder weights, or some other aftermarket solution. If that all sounds like a lot of math, don't worry. Reps marked the feel weight of the stacks. So if you set the stacks to 20 pounds, like these both are, and pull, that's the resistance you're feeling. And that resistance is smooth no matter where you pull from. There's a lot that goes into these systems. They're complex, and sure, Rep is using aluminum pulleys with high quality bearings throughout, but there's so much more engineering that has to go into something like this. And the benefit of a version 2 is that you're able to refine and improve things. So let's go through the functional trainer, lat pull down, and low row and talk about where they've updated things and whether or not they're all for the better. One of those areas where Rep's made a lot of changes is with the trolleys. Side by side with the 1.0, you can see the components are basically the same. So we still have the knurled handle, the plastic liner to keep your finish from getting worn as you slide them up and down, and they're still light and easy to adjust and move with one hand, which is a nice feature, but it's not like I'm curling with my other hand while I adjust these, although on second thought, they have made some important and meaningful tweaks as well. For example, the trolley pop pin now has a Delrin plastic tip, so it won't scratch your rack like the original did since there's no longer metal on metal contact. The biggest change on them though is with the cable routing. On the 1.0, the cable ran from the top down the center of the upright, which meant the trolleys had to be stored at the top of the rack or the cables would be in the way of any attachments. This limited your usable height, which was a big factor, especially if you had an 80-inch tall rack. The 2.0 fixes that by routing the cables along the outside of the uprights and feeding the front cable up from the bottom. Now the trolley can sit on the bottom of the rack, so you've got access to the full height of your uprights. And it's that change that's made space for Rep's new lever arms, and they could potentially even tie them into these cables. And since the cables run along the outside of the uprights, they don't really get in the way of your attachments. Yeah, you may have to move them aside when installing things, but the trolleys can still be placed at the top for something like dips if you're worried about them being underneath you, or if you just want to install your attachments as low as possible. It's a pretty clever tweak that doesn't affect functionality. Actually, it might even improve functionality. At 6 feet tall, I can still get a full range of motion on tricep pushdowns, even when using a long strap, and Winnie can still curl without the attachment bottoming out on the machine. The lat pull down has quite a few improvements over the original as well, although depending on your situation, they might not all be for the better. But I do feel like the 2.0 offers a much better experience overall. I'm no longer worried about knocking myself unconscious as I fight with the 2 attachment points of the 1.0, and even the build quality and knurling on the lap bar has been improved on the new version. With the stacks spun and pushed back, I don't feel like I'm cramped up against them anymore. On a 4-post build, the cables would be in the way on the 1.0. Now with them routed through the bottom of the trolleys, that's no longer an issue. And with the new, longer bar holder, the whole thing just feels less cluttered, making swapping and storing attachments simpler and just using it a much smoother experience. I still have plenty of cable travel, so I won't be limited in any way there, and I can get a full range of motion on my pulls with my 93-inch tall rack. That being said, although I like the new swivel pulley connector better than the banana system that was used to link the stacks on the original Aries, this one's much better made, much higher quality. But the new connector does bring your attachment point lower, and on an 80-inch tall rack, that could affect your range of motion because you'll have less height to work with. Of course, that's only a factor on a shorter rack when you're using the connector. During unilateral pulls, you'll be fine, and you'll be fine if you're shorter than me. Winnie, for example, at 5'6", would never have issues. She already has to stand on something to reach the bar on our rack. That scenario aside, the lat pull down is a big upgrade on the 2.0, even if linking the two stacks is still a bit clunky, which, because of her height, is probably best shown by Winnie as she swaps from lat pulls to low rows. By the time you unscrew and remove both pins, then screw them back in to link the stacks, it's a bit tedious, but then all you have to do is clip in your low row handle. Oh wait, you can't. Rep doesn't provide one. They give you another pair of D handles. Sure, the steel D handles are nice, they rotate smoothly and feel good in your hands, but do we really need 4 of them? So I'll just use my Rogue grip triangle, which isn't awkward at all. To be fair, you can clip literally anything into these carabiners, but where's the fun in that? Okay, so it's not the fastest system, but functionally it is a very good and much improved one. The low row is Rep's biggest upgrade on the 2.0. The 1.0 was passable, but kind of a mess. Since the cables ran on the outside of the footplate, getting into position with the stacks linked was a bit awkward. Your knees were kind of always in the way, and the low row height was too low. Now that the cables sit between your legs, it's much more comfortable. It doesn't quite sound right. Anyway, I can still do unilateral or bilateral exercises. The height is great. Putting the pulleys on the inside keeps my knees out of the way, and you can even row off a decline bench, though I personally find pulls feel better while seated on the floor with the Aries. I also wouldn't go as far as Rep does in saying that you can row while seated on a bench with this, but the now wider and beefier footplate is easier to adjust because they've added a built-in handle on the bottom, and that's not all the features Rep has crammed into this. The cutouts in the footplate help you center your bench or make it so you can push your bench further back for incline, although technically you can just remove the plate to set your bench deeper back if it doesn't fit the cutouts because they only work with benches with wide rear wheels. And I would know because I had the brilliant idea of testing it on quite a few benches, and then once I had rolled them all into place, I realized I could have just removed the footplate and put it up against the back of the benches. With or without the footplate though, you can't go much higher than a 30-degree incline angle depending on your bench because the stacks are back there, so you're limited on how far back your bench can go, and Rep is really trying to minimize the effect the Aries has on your rack's footprint. It adds less than 2 inches to the height of your rack and basically nothing to the depth, unless you get a 4-post and decide not to bolt it down because then you'd need the extension feet. Still, it's not as much space as Rogue's FM single stack add-on, which requires about 30 inches of extra space to function since they're making space for the Rhino belt squat trolley. The Aries is more in line with Rogue's twin stack, which again doesn't really affect your rack's footprint. And functionally, they're similar, though there are some differences, like the whole unilateral versus bilateral pull points thing, which we talked about in both our Rogue FM reviews. Another thing I compared in those reviews was Rep's versus Rogue's build quality. And no, they're not on the same level. Rogue's FMs feature your classic overbuilt American quality, and while Rep imports their equipment, the Aries is still very good. You could argue, and rightfully so, that Rogue's touches can be a bit over the top because for the most part they don't affect function, which didn't matter when they were priced about the same, but with Rogue raising prices on both the single and twin stack literally on the same day, right after my reviews came out, your choice just became a little more difficult. Do you pick Rogue's simplified and quicker single attachment point on the lat pull down in low row, or do you prefer Rep's true unilateral pull points? I will say that Rep is giving you both options with the Aries. Is it a factor to you that Rep's shrouds don't get in the way of the weight storage like the ones on the FMs do, while still giving your rack a polished and professional look and keeping your little one's hands safe? Rep has really refined things and done a great job listening to the community's feedback with the Aries 2.0. The attention to detail on this is outstanding. For instance, the fact that the magnetized weight pin has an actual hole in the top plate so you can store it, which you'd really think would be a standard thing. Rogue, sorry, something in my throat. But those little touches, those little things add up. If you're looking for a space-saving and very versatile solution that will do a ton for your home gym, I think the new Aries will be a fantastic addition, and using our link if you get one would be a fantastic idea as well. Rep has done a great job with the 2.0. If the Aries isn't for you, check out our twin stack review here and let us know what you want to see in the comparison video. Thanks to our Patreons, and thanks for watching.